I was just noting a few items during the regular inspection until I saw the photo on the general's desk. A little girl with brown hair, blue eyes familiar like an old scar in memory. The name engraved on the frame made my heart skip. Emily. That name used to be Lily in my orphanage memory. The moment the binder slipped from my hand, I knew this mission was no longer professional. It was a hunt for the truth, and the one hiding it wears a garrison cap. My name is Ava Merrick. I am 33 years old, an inspector for the Western Command Audit Unit, North Star Defense Corps. My job is numbers, procedures, and the clean, cold logic of compliance. We are the people who ensure the vast, humming machinery of defense spending runs without grit in its gears. We maintain professional distance. We trust the process. I arrived at Fort Bracken just after 0700. The morning was sharp, the kind of cold that clings to metal and cuts through standard-issue wool. The sky was a flat, unforgiving gray, reflecting off the polished brass plaque at the entrance. Fort Bracken was a place of angles, concrete, and rigid order. Even the gravel seemed to stay in formation. My audit target was General Thomas Keating. His reputation preceded him: meticulous, exacting, a man whose uniform creases were rumored to be sharp enough to draw blood. His office was on the third floor of the command building, overlooking the parade ground. When his aide showed me in, the general was standing, not behind his desk, but looking out the window, his back to me. The air in the room was still, smelling faintly of floor wax and old, important paper. "General Keating," I announced, my voice sounding too loud in the quiet. He turned. Keating was exactly as described: tall, lean, with short silver hair cut close to the scalp. His eyes were the color of the sky outside, and they assessed me instantly. Every ribbon on his chest was perfectly aligned. "Inspector Merrick," he acknowledged, his voice a dry rasp. "Welcome to Fort Bracken. My records are at your disposal." He gestured to a cleared visitor's desk adjacent to his own massive mahogany one. "My aide will bring coffee." "Thank you. General, black is fine," I said, sliding my briefcase onto the visitor's desk and pulling out my preliminary checklist. I started my work. The audit was routine, cross-referencing logistical expenditures, verifying supply chain invoices, checking personnel assignments against budget allocations. It was the rhythm of my life. Check, verify, note, move on. The only sound in the office was the precise click of my pen, the rustle of files, and the steady, heavy thud of a grandfather clock in the corner. Tick-tock! I moved to the personnel files, my standard procedure. General Keating sat at his desk, signing a stack of documents, his own pen moving with silent efficiency. The atmosphere was professional, controlled, sterile. My checklist required me to verify the dependent allocations for his command staff. Starting with him, I reached for the file, but my gaze snagged on something just past his elbow. On the corner of his immaculate desk, separate from the orderly stacks of paper, sat a single, silver-plated frame. It was not a formal portrait, it was a candid shot. A little girl, maybe 4 or 5 years old, laughing in a patch of sunlight. She had unruly brown hair, a cheap-looking floral dress, and a dimple that creased her right cheek. But it was the eyes, bright, piercing blue eyes. Eyes I knew. My memory, usually so orderly, fractured. The polished office dissolved, replaced by the scent of industrial disinfectant and boiled laundry. I was back at the Ridgeview home in Santa Fe Springs, a long, low building that always smelled like dust and regret. I was 8, and she was 4. She was not Emily, as the frame's engraving read. She was Lily. The name hit me with physical force. Lily, who hoarded sugar packets. Lily, who drew airplanes on dusty windowsills. Lily, who had a tiny, perfect half-moon mole just below her hairline, on the nape of her neck. My hand, the one holding the audit binder, suddenly lost its strength. The heavy binder hit the polished floor with a sound like a gunshot. A cascade of papers, spreadsheets, reports, my meticulous checklists exploded across the floor, skittering under the desk. The clock ticked, talked. The sound hammered against my temples. "Inspector?" Keating's voice was sharp, cutting through the sudden fog in my head. He was on his feet, his eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in sharp, analytical concern. "Inspector Merrick, are you all right?" My breath was gone. I was staring at the photo, at the scattered papers, at the betrayal of my own professionalism. My heart was a frantic bird against my ribs. The photo," I managed to say. My voice was a stranger's, thin and reedy. Keating's gaze followed mine to the silver frame. His expression did not change, but something in his posture tightened, became defensive. "My daughter," he said. The words clipped. I dropped to my knees, ostensibly to gather the papers, but really to hide the sudden, shocking tremor in my hands. I grabbed a spreadsheet, my fingers leaving damp prints on the margin. "I am sorry, sir," I whispered, forcing air into my lungs. "It is just... she looks... I knew a girl, at Ridgeview Home, the orphanage I grew up in." I looked up at him from the floor. The papers clutched to my chest. "She looked exactly like that. We called her Lily." Keating's face remained a mask of military discipline, but a flicker, a tiny, involuntary twitch in his left eye, told me he was listening. "Children look alike, Inspector," he said, his voice flat. "No, sir," I insisted. Pushing myself to my feet, I left the papers on the floor. "Not like this. The dimple, the eyes, but there was something else, a private detail. I was violating every rule of engagement I had. This was not professional. This was not distance." "She had a mark," I said, the memory clear and bright. A birthmark, a tiny, perfect half-moon mole. Right here. I touched the back of my own neck, just below the hairline. And she had a habit, when she thought no one was looking, she would draw, always the same thing. She would find a dusty window or a foggy piece of glass and draw airplanes with her finger. The mask shattered. General Thomas Keating, the man of meticulous precision, visibly broke. It was not a large movement, it was an implosion. His shoulders lost their rigid line. The color drained from his face, leaving his skin the color of ash. His eyes, those flat gray eyes, suddenly fractured, revealing a chasm of grief so profound it sucked the air from the room. He sank into his chair, not like a general, but like an old man. His hand, which had signed documents with such precision, fumbled for the edge of the desk. My daughter," he whispered, the words ragged, broken. "My Emily. She went missing when she was 4, from a park in Albuquerque, 28 years ago." The silence that followed was heavier than the grandfather clock's toll. He was lost in that park. 28 years ago, I was lost in Ridgeview, remembering a tiny hand slipping into mine. "Sir," I said, my voice gaining a new, hard strength. The inspector was gone. Someone else was here. "Lily, the girl I knew, she was transferred, out of Ridgeview. When I was 10, she would have been 6. The paperwork said Houston Foster System." Keating looked at me, his eyes pleading. "It cannot be." "That photograph says it can," I replied. "Sir, if Emily is Lily, then someone did not find a lost girl. Someone placed her. Someone filed her away." He stared at me, seeing me for the first time, not as an auditor, but as a link, a witness. "What do you need?" he asked, his voice raw. "The adoption records, the transfer manifests for Ridgeview. If they still exist, I need to see how a general's missing daughter ends up in a state-run orphanage 100 miles away, and then vanishes again into the system." "This is not your jurisdiction, Merrick," he stated, the general surfacing slightly. "It is now, sir," I said. "With respect, this audit is compromised, but this is a different kind of investigation." He held my gaze. He was assessing me again, but this time, he was looking for an ally, not a subordinate. "I cannot officially sanction this," he said, his voice regaining some of its steel. A formal inquiry by me would trigger alarms. It would drive them deeper underground. Them? He ignored the question. But an inspector from the audit unit, you have clearance. You have a reason to pull on disparate threads, invoices, shipping manifests, relocation budgets. He was thinking tactically again. You will have my silent backing, whatever you need, whatever doors you need opened. I understand, sir. You will report only to me, off-channel, he commanded. Yes, General. He nodded, a sharp, decisive motion. The mask was back, but I knew what was behind it now. I gathered the last of my scattered papers, my hands perfectly steady. The mission had changed. The protocol of professional distance had been vaporized. This was no longer an audit. It was a recovery. It was a promise to a 4-year-old girl who drew airplanes on dusty glass. I walked out of General Thomas Keating's office, the click of my heels sharp on the tile floor. I left the audit binder on the visitor's desk, unfinished. It did not matter. If that girl was Lily, if Lily was Emily, then someone in the system, my system, our system, had not just made a mistake, they had hidden a child. They had buried a life under layers of bureaucratic procedure, and I knew procedure better than anyone. That night, sleep was impossible. The temporary quarters at Fort Bracken were sterile, silent, and cold. But the cold I felt was older. It was the chill of a thin blanket on a narrow cot at Ridgeview Home. I closed my eyes and I was 8 years old again. The dormitory was dark, rows of beds holding quiet lumps. The only light was the weak yellow glow from the administrator's office down the hall, from the cot next to mine. A tiny sound, a whimper, then a song. It was Lily. She was singing to her bear, a worn-out thing with one button eye, dressed in a stained, miniature sailor suit. Someone had probably donated it from a military base. Lily hummed a tune that was not a real song. Just a few notes repeated, a loop of comfort against the dark. Her voice was thin, barely a whisper. I remembered lying awake, listening, feeling a strange, fierce protectiveness for this tiny girl who drew airplanes and sang to broken toys. I sat up in the hotel stiff bed. The memory was too clear, too painful. The inspector in me was already compromised. The girl from Ridgeview was now running point. I moved to the desk and opened my secure laptop. My official audit of Fort Bracken was frozen, an open wound of incomplete checklists. I ignored it and opened a new, encrypted file, a blank white screen. I began to build a map. At the top, a box, Ridgeview Home. Below it, a box, Lily, case ID unknown. An arrow connected them. I accessed the New Mexico State Social Services archives, using my North Star clearance to bypass the usual requests. It was a privilege I used sparingly. The Ridgeview records were thin, digitized poorly from microfilm. Many were corrupted, but I found the transfer logs for the year I remembered. There, on a scanned ledger, a line item, transfer, bulk, 6 children, destination, Houston foster system. The entry was faint. The ink bled by time, but the destination was legible. Houston. There were no individual names, just case IDs. I had no ID for Lily. I closed the archive and opened my secure email client. There was only one person I trusted for this kind of query. To Rios, E, JAG, Western Command. From Merrick, A, WC, Audit. Sub-J, Research Query, Obscure Directive. Elena. I need a quiet pull on a legacy item. Directive 90IP, all references, any level, all services. I am specifically looking for operational charters, signatory authority, and any intersection with non-DoD agencies. High priority, low visibility. Thanks. Ava. Elena Rios was JAG, a lawyer who understood the difference between what was legal and what was right. And she knew how to navigate the gray space where the archives hid their secrets. She would not ask why. She would just dig. I powered down, but the screen stayed dark for only a few minutes. A priority alert chimed. A secure courier pouch was waiting for me at the front desk. I retrieved it and locked my door. Inside was a simple manila envelope, sealed with tape. No note. Just Keating's immaculate, precise handwriting. Merrick. I pulled out the contents. They were not documents. They were photographs. Old, faded color prints from the early 90s. A smiling man. A younger, softer Keating in civilian clothes, with his arm around a woman with bright, laughing eyes, and in front of them, a little girl. My breath caught. It was her. It was Lily. The same brown hair, the same impossible-to-replicate dimple on the right cheek, the same piercing blue eyes. In one photo, she was at a birthday party, wearing a cone-shaped hat, looking startled by the flash. In another, she was on a beach, wrapped in a towel. I turned that one over, written on the back in fading blue ink, Emmy, 4 years old, Cabrillo Beach. I took the photo to the lamp, using the small magnifying glass from my audit kit. I zoomed in on the image, on the back of her small neck, just visible above the towel. There it was, faint, blurry, but unmistakable, a small, dark mark, a perfect half moon. I sat down. The photographs fanned out on the desk. The suspicion was gone, replaced by a cold certainty. Emily Keating, daughter of General Thomas Keating, was Lily, case ID unknown, of Ridgeview Home. The question was no longer if, the question was how. How does a high-profile missing child, the daughter of a career military officer, end up laundered into the state orphanage system? She should have been on every milk carton, every news broadcast. She was not found. She was placed. I turned back to the laptop, my mind racing. A simple kidnapping for ransom would not end with the child in an orphanage. A custodial dispute? Keating's files showed he was a widower. His wife had passed years after Emily's disappearance. This was something else. This was an operation. It felt organized. It felt procedural. And that brought me back to my own world. Logistics. If you want to move a person like a piece of cargo, you use a logistics bureau. I opened my North Star portal and began to research the Aegis Logistics Bureau, the ALB. On the surface, they were the FedEx of the Defense Corps. They moved everything: beans, bullets, boots, and base plates. Their charter was vast, covering everything from routine supply chain management to emergency disaster relief coordination. They had authority to move assets across state lines, bypassing mountains of red tape under specific emergency protocols. I spent hours reading their procedural manuals, densely written, mind-numbing text designed to be impenetrable. I searched for overlaps with Health and Human Services, with FEMA, with any civilian child welfare agency. Nothing. The ALB moved property. They did not move people, not in that way, not officially. But I was an auditor. I knew that the official manual was only half the story. The other half was in the exceptions, the addendums, the special programs. I cross-referenced ALB operations with the date of Emily's disappearance. Nothing. I widened the search. I looked for any special projects activated in the New Mexico or Texas regions in the 2-year span after she vanished. A single line item, buried in a budgetary annex from an audit I had performed 3 years prior at Fort Hood, caught my eye. A reimbursement request from the ALB to a program I had never heard of. Orion Infrastructure Program, OIP. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I searched for Orion Infrastructure Program. The system returned almost nothing. It was a ghost, a defunct program. It existed, according to the records, for only 8 months. 29 years ago. Its official charter was vague. To provide supplemental stabilization and asset management in designated reconstruction zones. Reconstruction zones in the continental United States? I dug deeper, pulling up the original authorization directive. It was signed by a slew of high-ranking officials, most now retired or dead. And there, on the signatory page, was the official stamp, a stylized constellation. The Orion Infrastructure Program. My email chimed. It was Rios. To Merrick, A. From Rios. E. Sub J. Research query. One file attached, hard to find. It was classified as operationally concluded and archived to deep storage. Looks like a dead-end logistics initiative from the early 90s. Post-disaster stuff. Why are you pulling on this thread? Ava. Attachment. OIP Charter. Declassified. PDF. I did not answer her. I opened the file. It was the full program charter. Vague, bureaucratic, full of terms like non-traditional assets and civilian infrastructure stabilization. And then, a second alert, a secure message from Keating. It was not a message. It was a single, high-resolution scan. It was a page from his daughter's original missing person file, a police report, and near the bottom, a note from the responding officer. Father states child was last seen playing near the logistics depot at the edge of the park. Area was being used for a joint DoD state emergency preparedness drill. A drill. A drill run by a logistics bureau, a bureau that had a ghost program called Orion, a program whose initials were OIP. My email to Rios flashed in my mind. Directive 9 OIP. I had seen it on the spine of a binder in Keating's office. I had assumed it was OIP. What if it was 90 IP? This was too much. I was chasing shadows. I needed something physical. I needed the source code. I pulled out a fresh legal pad and started a list. My new checklist. 1. Ridgeview Home. Physical records. 2. Intake file. Medical records for Lily. Case tag must exist. 3. Transfer authorization. I needed to see the signature on the paper that moved her to Houston. 4. Logbooks. Who signed her out? What time? What vehicle? I would have to go back to Santa Fe Springs, back to the place that smelled like dust and disinfectant. I set my security protocols. I logged out of the North Star system. I powered down the laptop. I would travel under my audit credentials, but my communication would go dark. No official reports. No check-ins. I was an inspector, but this was not an inspection. I stood up and walked to the window. The pre-dawn light was starting to turn the sky a bruised purple. Fort Bracken was silent, a sleeping giant of order and discipline. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass. The face that stared back was not Inspector Merrick. It was not the 8-year-old girl afraid of the dark. It was something new. A soldier, yes, but not one who followed procedure. One who hunted it, a memory investigator, and I was going back to the scene of the crime. I drove the rented sedan south from Albuquerque, leaving the high-tech sterility of the defense world behind and entering the dusty, sun-bleached memoryscape of Santa Fe Springs. The closer I got, the tighter the knot in my stomach. You can leave a place like Ridgeview Home, but it never fully leaves you. I parked across the street. The building was just as I remembered, only smaller. Sadder. The red brick was flaking, showing pale gray concrete beneath, like old wounds. The sign, which I remembered as a cheerful blue, was now a faded, sun-bleached plank. Ridgeview Home. The paint was peeling. The letters barely legible. The chain-link fence had a new coat of rust. I sat in the car for a full 5 minutes, the engine cooling, my own systems on high alert. This was not an audit. This was an excavation. I got out, my suit jacket feeling stiff and alien in this environment. The air smelled the same. Dry dust, creosote, and the faint, institutional sweetness of industrial cleaning supplies. I walked up the cracked concrete path and pushed open the heavy wooden door. The smell hit me first. Floor wax and old varnished wood. The exact same scent. It was the smell of my childhood, a mixture of sanitation and decay. The entryway was dim, the same linoleum floor, worn down to the backing in the center, was polished to a dull shine. To the left, the administrator's office. A woman was sitting behind the desk, not the matron I remembered, but someone younger, though equally tired. She looked up. "Can I help you?" I am here to see Sister Rochelle," I said, my voice catching. "Sister Rochelle is retired," the woman said, looking back at her computer screen. "She volunteers on Tuesdays." My heart sank. I had not called ahead. It was Tuesday. I had driven 200 miles on a Tuesday. "It is Tuesday," I said. The woman sighed. "She is in the back, sorting donations, down the hall, last door on the left." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I walked down the familiar hallway. The walls were still painted that awful institutional green, a color that was supposed to be calming but only ever felt like surrender. The last door on the left was the donation room, which used to be the recreation room. I pushed it open. The room was filled with black trash bags and cardboard boxes, stacked high. Sitting on a low stool, patiently sorting onesies, was a small, frail woman with a halo of white hair. "Sister?" She looked up. Her eyes, magnified by thick glasses, were still the same, clear and sharp. She squinted, her head tilting. "My goodness," she whispered. She put a tiny folded shirt down and stood up, her hands reaching out. "It cannot be, is it, Ava?" She said my name, and the armor I had spent 15 years building, the rank, the regulations, the professional distance, crumbled into dust. She crossed the room in 3 small steps and wrapped her thin, strong arms around me. I did not hug her back. I simply collapsed against her, my head dropping to her shoulder, and for the first time since I was 8 years old, I let the wall fall. The hug lasted only a second, but it was enough to break me. "Oh, child," she murmured, patting my back. "Look at you. You are all sharp edges." I pulled back, wiping my eyes angrily, furious at the breach in my own security. "It is good to see you, sister." "It is good to see you, Ava Merrick. You look important," she smiled, a network of kind wrinkles forming around her eyes. "But you are not here for an old woman. You are here for something else. I can see the look. You always had that look. The one where you were counting the floor tiles." "I am here for information," I said, resuming my inspector's tone. "About another girl, someone who was here with me, Lily." The smile did not fade, but it softened into memory. "Oh, Lily," she breathed. "Of course, your Lily. Such a sweet, sad little thing. She was your shadow for 2 years. Do you remember her?" "Like yesterday," Sister Rochelle said, sitting back down on the stool, her hands finding comfort in folding a small blanket. "She was a good girl, always fixing things. We would find broken toys in the bin, and the next day, she would have put them back together with string or glue. And she drew, on everything, little airplanes, flying away." My heart hammered against my ribs. Yes, that was her. She sang, too, a little song. "The Sleepy Tune, Wayne," we called it. Sister Rochelle nodded. She would hum it to the younger ones when they cried. A strange little melody, but it worked. She had a gift for mending things. We all thought she would be adopted quickly. "She was transferred," I said, the words feeling heavy. "I need to see the file, her file." Sister Rochelle's face clouded. "Oh, Ava, the files. It was terrible. The basement flooded. Must be 15 years ago now. The pipe burst. We lost so much. Everything from before 1998 it is a mess. We salvaged what we could, but most of it was just pulp." "Please," I said, "anything you have. It is important. It is vital." She saw the look in my eyes, the desperation I was trying to hide behind my uniform. "The salvaged records are in the old file room. What is left of them? Come." She led me to a small, cramped room that smelled of mildew and paper dust. Metal shelves lined the walls, holding gray, water-stained document boxes. "They are not in order," she warned. "We tried." I did not care. I was an auditor. Chaos was just an unsorted spreadsheet. "What year was the transfer, approximately?" "Lily? Oh, I remember. It was the summer after you turned 10. So, 1997? I found the box labeled 1997. Transfers. Damaged. It was half full of stiff, warped folders. I took it to a small table under a buzzing fluorescent light. I opened folder after folder. Most were just smears of ink. The paper fused together. And then I found it. It was not a full file. It was a single sheet, a transfer directive, stuck to the back of a medical intake form. The top of the form was water damaged. The name Lily barely visible, but the case tag was sharp, stamped in purple ink. Case tag 217L. My hands were steady. My auditor training took over. I was documenting a discrepancy. The transfer directive itself was on a different letterhead. It was a standard state form, but something was wrong. At the bottom, there was a stamp, a circular seal I did not recognize. She was transferred to the Houston system, I said, reading the faint type, to a place called Metropolitan Social Relief. I never heard of it, Sister Rochelle said, peering over my shoulder. Neither have I murmured, but it was not the destination that held my attention. It was the authorization. There was a rubber stamp impression. Relocation authorized under FEMA Directive 77B. Operation Summer Storm. Operation Summer Storm, I repeated. I do not remember a hurricane. We do not get hurricanes, dear, Sister Rochelle said. We had a bad thunderstorm that year. Knocked down the old oak, but no FEMA event. My blood ran cold. A FEMA stamp for a storm that never happened. Next to the FEMA stamp was another logo, one that had no business being on a state social services form. It was small, an eagle clutching a gear. The logo of the DoD Temporary Relief Initiative. It was an obscure program, mostly used for managing logistics after overseas natural disasters. And below that, in the signature block, a faint scrawl, a signature, barely legible, written in blue ink that had feathered from the water damage. E. Matthews. I turned the page over. On the back, in the routing section, was another stamp. This one so jarring, so out of place, it felt like a scream. Authorized for transport, Aegis Logistics Bureau. The ALB, on a civilian child transfer form. That was not just a discrepancy, that was a violation. Aegis Logistics Bureau moved cargo, not children. This was not procedure. This was a hijacking, dressed up in official-looking stamps. Sister, I said, my voice carefully neutral. Do you remember who picked her up? The transport officers? She frowned, pressing her fingers to her temple. It is so long ago, Ava. But, yes, I do remember. It was unusual. It was not our usual state social worker, Mrs. Paez. It was 2 men. 2 men? Yes, they were very official. They did not smile. They wore uniforms, not police, military, like yours, but green. They said they were here for the relocation. They said it was for her safety. I held the paper in my hand. Case tag 217L, a phony FEMA order, a ghost destination, a military logistics stamp, and 2 men in uniform. Ava? Sister Rochelle touched my arm. You are white as a sheet. What is it? I pulled out my phone. I took high-resolution, macro-shot photographs of every part of that document. The case tag, the stamps, the signature, the DoD logo, the ALB seal. I photographed the water-stained intake form, capturing the faint letters LILY. I documented the box, the shelf, the room. I preserved the scene. Ava? They lied. Sister, I said, my voice quiet, but shaking with a cold rage I had not felt in 20 years. Safety was the code word. I had my computer in the car. I ran a quick check on the National Weather Service archives for 1997. New Mexico, Texas, no hurricanes, no tropical storms, no declared federal disaster zones. Operation Summer Storm did not exist. I looked at the picture of the form on my phone, the signature, E. Matthews, the DoD logo, the ALB. This was not a transfer. It was an abduction. Signed, stamped, and filed by the very system I worked for. The picture was no longer just of procedural anomalies. It was a map of a conspiracy. And I had just found the first X, the signature, E. Matthews, was a thread, in the military, Middle names are administrative ballast, used on forms and then forgotten. But E. Matthews on a document countersigned by Aegis Logistics Bureau was a name. My clearance was for auditing, but the tools were the same. I ran a service-wide search for all personnel named E. Matthews, who had served in the ALB, Southwest Region, between 1990 and 1998. The system returned one name, Colonel Everett Matthews Brenner, retired, current address in Sun City, Arizona. I was on a plane within 3 hours. Sun City was a world of beige stucco, pristine gravel lawns, and oppressive, orderly silence. It was a place where people came to polish their memories and wait for the end. Brenner's house was like all the others. Perfect, clean, devoid of personality, a model home for a model life. I rang the bell at 2 in the afternoon. The sun was a white-hot hammer, and the air smelled of hot gravel and faintly lemon. The man who opened the door was in his late 70s, wearing a crisp polo shirt and beige slacks. He was thin, with a military straight spine and clear, wary eyes. "Colonel Brenner?" "Yes." His voice was polite but sharp. "My name is Ava Merrick. I'm with the Western Command Audit Unit. I am following up on a legacy file review. May I have a few minutes of your time?" His eyes swept my ID, then my face. He was an officer. I was an officer. The code demanded he let me in, even if every instinct told him not to. "Audit Unit?" he said, stepping back. "We are a long way from Western Command. Inspector." "The files are old, sir. They travel." I stepped inside. The house was immaculate. The carpet had fresh vacuum lines. The furniture was polished to a high sheen, and the air was thick with the scent of lemon oil. On the wall, in a precise grid, were his medals, a career laid out for inspection, a life of service, a surface of absolute, impenetrable standards. "Please, have a seat," he said, gesturing to a stiff-backed armchair. He did not offer coffee. This was not a social call. "What is this regarding?" I sat, placing my briefcase on the floor. I kept my hands visible on my lap. "I am reviewing a transfer authorization from 1997, from the Ridgeview home in Santa Fe Springs, a child. Case tag 217L. Brenner's face was a perfect, practiced mask of polite confusion. He gave a small, dismissive laugh. "Inspector, that was nearly 30 years ago. I commanded the entire Southwest Logistics Theater. I do not recall individual case files, certainly not from an orphanage." It was a good denial, smooth, immediate, and layered with plausible irrelevance. "This file was unusual. Sir, it was a civilian transfer, a minor, but it was routed through ALB. It bears your signature. I signed thousands of documents a year. If it crossed my desk, it was because it was procedure." "This one was not procedure," I said, my voice quiet, but cutting through the smell of lemons. "It was authorized under a falsified FEMA directive and stamped with the seal of the DoD Temporary Relief Initiative. It also carried the ALB authorization stamp." I watched him. Nothing. Not a flinch. He was a rock. "Well," he said, steepling his fingers, "if you have a problem with a file from 30 years ago, I suggest you file a report. I am not sure what you expect me to remember." He was going to stonewall. He had been practicing this denial for decades. I had one card left to play. "The file also had an alphanumeric," I said. "Directive 90IP. The name hit him like a physical blow. His polite confusion vanished. His mask did not crack. It evaporated. His pupils, the only part of him he could not control, contracted to pinpricks. His hands, which had been perfectly still, clenched the arms of his chair. He did not speak. He just stared at me, his face pale. I changed my tactics. The auditor was gone. The girl from Ridgeview stepped forward. "Colonel," I said, leaning in, my voice dropping, "I am not here to threaten your pension. I am not here to review your career. You can keep your medals. I am here because case tag 217L was a person, a little girl. Her name was Lily." His breath hitched. It was a tiny sound, almost imperceptible. She was taken from a park. Colonel, her father is General Thomas Keating. She was his missing daughter, and someone in your command, laundered her. They hid her in an orphanage for 2 years, and then they used your signature to make her disappear again." I stood up, too agitated to sit. "I am not here as an auditor, sir. I am here to save a life, to give a life back. You were a soldier. I am a soldier. I am asking you, man to man, to fix this. Tell me who gave the order." Brenner looked broken. The straight spine had slumped. The clear eyes were now cloudy with a 30-year-old memory. He looked at his wall of medals, but I do not think he saw them. "You do not know what you are doing," he whispered, his voice a dry rustle. "You are opening a box that cannot be closed." "It is already open, sir. I am just looking for the man who locked it." He was silent for a full minute. I could hear a clock ticking in the hallway, a sound that was suddenly too loud, just like the clock in Keating's office. "I was forced," he finally said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "I was ordered to sign. I objected. I said it was not our charter. It was a civilian matter. It was irregular." "Who ordered you?" "He was just a major then, but he had influence. He came from D.C. He said it was a matter of national security, a special interest item." "A major?" "Major H," Brenner said, spitting the name. "He brought the file to me himself. He said it was a simple transfer. For the child's safety. He said the father was unstable, a threat, that this was a protected relocation. He said the state systems were compromised." "And you believed him?" "No," Brenner snapped, his eyes flashing with old anger. "I did not. I told him it was non-compliant. He told me I was a soldier, and then he showed me the authorization. It was from the Undersecretary's office." "So you signed?" He pointed to the stamp," Brenner said, looking haunted. "The Orion program," he said. "Look, Colonel, it is already authorized by a higher authority. I knew Orion was defunct. I knew it. The seal was dead. Using it was a signal that this was off the books, a ghost operation. It meant, do not ask. It meant sign, or be buried." My blood ran cold. "Major H, who is he? Colonel?" Brenner looked up at me, his face a ruin of old compromises. "His name is Malcolm Hargrove. He is the Undersecretary of North Star Defense now, and he is not a man who forgets." The name landed in the room and settled, sucking all the air out. Hargrove, one of the most powerful men in the Corps. My boss's boss's boss. "You are walking into a buzzsaw, Inspector," Brenner said. "This man, Hargrove, he built a career on this? On hiding a child? He built a career on loyalty, on fixing problems, on believing that some orders are above procedure." Brenner's gaze went back to his medals. "There are some orders, Inspector, that do not just ask for your obedience, they demand your honor, they demand your soul. I signed that paper, and I have polished these medals every week for 30 years, trying to remember what that honor felt like." He stood up, his movements stiff. He walked to his immaculate desk, opened a locked drawer, and took something out. "I knew this day might come," he murmured. "When you live with a lie, you either prepare for its discovery or you die with it. I am not sure which is worse." He turned and held his hand out. In his palm was a gray plastic card, a magnetic stripe access card, but one without any markings. "The ALB Houston Archives. It is a deep storage facility. They keep the hard copies, the real ones, not the digitized ghosts you have been chasing." I took the card. It was warm from his hand. "This will get you in the front door. One time," he said. "After you use it, it is burned. The system will flag it, but it will be too late. Go to the 3rd sublevel, aisle 140, box 47C. I repeated it. Box 47C. It is all there. The original transfer, the medicals, the destination, the why. I looked it up 20 years ago. When I was drunk and brave, I put the access codes in this card's chip. It is a key and a map. It will take you right to it." I slid the card into my pocket. "Thank you, Colonel." He walked me to the door. The sun was still high, the heat oppressive. "Inspector," he said, stopping me at the threshold. I turned. "Do not go back there after you use this card. Do not go back to your office. Do not trust your encrypted email. Do not trust anyone. The men who opened that file. They wear the same badges we do, but they have no conscience. They have only the mission." "What was the mission, Colonel?" "That," he said, "is what is in the box." He closed the door. The lemon scent was cut off. I walked back to my car, the bright, white sun blinding me. My hand was in my pocket, wrapped around the small plastic card. It was a key. It was a booby trap. Brenner was right. I was opening a box that could not be closed. But he was wrong about one thing. It was not a buzzsaw I was walking into. It was a reckoning. The archives were in Houston. The door was now open. But as I started the car, I felt the unmistakable weight of a target settling between my shoulder blades. The investigation was live. The Aegis Logistics Bureau Houston Archive was not a building. It was a concrete box, a massive, windowless cube sitting in an industrial park, surrounded by a 12-foot razor wire fence. It was a place designed to be forgotten, a tomb for inconvenient paper. I arrived at 0200. The air was thick and humid, smelling of the ship channel and refined oil. I parked my rental a block away and walked, my footsteps sounding too loud on the gritty sidewalk. The gate was a simple card reader. I held my breath and slid Brenner's gray card through the slot. A small LED clicked from red to green. A heavy magnetic lock released with a low, satisfying thunk. I was in. The building itself was another challenge. The main door was a slab of reinforced steel. I used the card again. Beep, green. The door hissed open on a pneumatic hinge, revealing an entryway lit by a single, buzzing fluorescent tube. The air inside was cold, refrigerated, and smelled of ozone and old paper. The archives were automated. There was no guard, no reception, just a turnstile and another card reader. Beep, green. I passed through. I was now inside the system. Brenner's directions were to the third sublevel. The elevator was a freight model. Slow and groaning, it descended with a shudder. The cables protesting. The doors opened onto a cavern. The room was the size of a football field, filled with gray metal shelving units that soared 40 feet high, disappearing into the industrial gloom. The only light came from motion-activated fluorescent banks, which flickered on, row by row, as I walked. Each bank hummed with a high-pitched whine, illuminating my path and then plunging the aisle behind me back into darkness. It was a disorienting, pulsing light, like a nervous heartbeat. My footsteps echoed, click, 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 a single, sharp sound in a vast, dead space. Metal dust hung in the air, coating everything, including my tongue. Aisle 140. The aisles were marked with stenciled numbers. I walked, the lights flickering on and off ahead of me, chasing my shadow. Click, 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 138, 139, 140. It was a canyon of gray, identical boxes. Brenner's final instruction. Box 47C, the shelving was marked. A, B, C. I moved to the third section. The box was at eye level. It was a standard-issue government records box, gray and unassuming, but when I pulled it from the shelf, I was surprised by its weight. It was heavy, heavy with history, heavy as old sins. I carried it to a small, built-in service desk at the end of the aisle. I set it down. The sound echoed. I lifted the lid. The file was right on top. A simple manila folder, slightly warped, with a handwritten label, ID 217L. My hands were shaking. I forced them still. I was an auditor. I was a witness. I opened the folder. The first item was a photograph, not the candid shot from Keating's desk. This was an intake photo. Lily, Emily. She was staring at the camera, her blue eyes wide with a terror that had not yet turned to grief. She was holding the one-eyed sailor bear. The photo was black and white, clinical, attached to a form. I put the photo aside. Underneath, The documents. A medical examination. Subject is female, approx 4 years of age, undernourished but no signs of physical abuse, a single birthmark, crescent-shaped, noted on nape of neck, the language was cold, detached. Subject exhibits signs of dissociation, refuses to speak. Responds to Lily, a psychological evaluation, dated 6 months later. Subject has adapted to Ridgeview environment, has formed attachment to older child. Merrick onto A, still exhibits fixation on aviation imagery, drawings. They had watched her, they had documented her, and then, at the bottom of the stack, I found it. The original transfer order, not the water-damaged copy from Ridgeview. This was the pristine, original. It was not a state form, it was a DUD internal memo. Subject: Asset 217L. Destination: Ridgeview Home, Santa Fe Springs. Authorization: authorized under HVTX. OPs. And there, at the bottom, the stamp, the stylized constellation of the Orion Infrastructure Program, a program that was already dead, already defunct. Using that stamp was not an authorization, it was a signature. It was a claim of ownership by a ghost. HVTX Ops, Hargrove, Texas Operations. This was it, the entire conspiracy on a single sheet of paper. They had not found her. They had processed her. They had designated a 4-year-old girl a non-traditional asset and moved her like a piece of misplaced cargo. I took out my phone. My hands were perfectly steady now. The rage had burned away the fear. I laid each document on the desk. Click, the digital shutter, the medical report. Click, the psychological evaluation. Click, the authorization memo, with the Orion stamp and the HVTX OPS designation. Click, click, click. I photographed every page, every signature, every stamp. I separated the intake photo, the one of her holding the bear. I photographed it last, a close-up on her terrified, beautiful eyes. I was slotting the phone back into my pocket when I heard the sound. It was not a footstep. It was not a voice. It was the thud of the heavy magnetic lock on the main archive door, followed by the pneumatic hiss. Someone else was in the building, and the motion-activated lights, which had been off at the far end of the archive, were now flickering on, row by row, coming closer. I did not hide. There was nowhere to hide. I stood by the service desk, the open box in front of me. The footsteps were silent. He wore crepe-soled shoes, but the lights announced him. A rolling wave of fluorescence. He stopped about 20 feet away, just at the edge of the light's immediate pool. He was not in uniform. He was in a perfectly tailored dark suit. He was in his 50s, with silver hair and a face that would have been handsome if it were not so empty. "Inspector Merrick," he said. His voice was smooth, almost pleasant, like a news anchor's. It did not echo. It seemed to cut through the silence. "That is quite a box," he said, taking a step closer. "Box 47C, it has been on our alert list for a very long time. Brenner's card. It had been a key, and it had been a bell, warning them the moment I used it." "Who are you?" I asked, my voice flat. "My name is Calder. I am with DoD Internal Security," he said, which was not a real title. It was a euphemism. "And I am afraid you have come into possession of documents that are far above your pay grade. Inspector." He took another step. I could smell him now. Faint, expensive cologne, sandalwood. It did not belong in the dust. "I am going to have to ask you to return the file, and the photographs you took." He knew. Of course he knew. "It is a simple records violation. Inspector, a professional misstep. You give me the phone, you give me the file, and we can forget this whole audit ever happened. You can be back at your desk in Western Command by Monday." He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "The system is very large. Inspector Merrick, you are a very small, very sharp part of it. But if you try to fight it, it will simply grind you down. It will roll right over you. Think of your career. Think of your life." I looked at him. I looked at the file. I looked at the picture of Lily. I slid my hand into my pocket. Calder tensed. his hand twitching toward his jacket. I did not pull out a weapon. I discreetly tapped the screen of my phone, activating the audio recorder. "Is that a threat, Mr. Calder?" I asked, my voice loud and clear. "For the recording." "It is an assessment," he said smoothly. "A fact of life. Hand it over." "This file proves the abduction of a minor, the daughter of a general. It is evidence." "It is a mistake," he corrected me. "A 30-year-old administrative error, and we are here to correct it. Now." He took the final step, standing just across the small desk from me. This was the line. "You touch me," I said, my voice low and cold. "And this entire file, including the recording of this conversation, automatically uploads to 10 different addresses: the Washington Post, the Joint Chiefs, Captain Elena Rios at JAG, General Thomas Keating." I stared into his empty eyes. "You might be the system, Mr. Calder, but I am an auditor. I build in redundancies. The question you have to ask yourself is, do you feel lucky?" His smile was gone. His face was a sheet of ice. He was assessing me. He was calculating the odds. He saw the truth in my eyes. He saw the girl from Ridgeview, and she was not bluffing. Calder did not like bad odds. He was a manager, not a brawler. He took a single, deliberate step back. "You are making a profound error, Inspector," he said, his voice losing its warmth, becoming a razor. "You think you have a shield, but all you have is a target." He turned, his polished shoes making no sound on the concrete. "The system will correct this. It always does." He walked away. The lights in the aisles flickered off behind him, one by one, plunging the archive back into darkness. Clack, hiss, the main door closed. He was gone. I stood there for a full minute, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would break my ribs. The smell of sandalwood and old paper. I did not wait. Brenner had warned me. Calder had confirmed it. I was compromised. I grabbed the intake photo of Lily, the one with the bear, and slid it inside my jacket. I left the rest of the file in the box. The physical file was a trap. My copies were the weapon. I found a network junction in the elevator shaft. I plugged in my own burner hotspot, creating a temporary anonymous node. My fingers flew. Encrypt, compress. I sent the first file, the entire package, including the new audio of Calder, to my private, offshore cloud drive. I sent the second package, a duplicate, to Captain Elena Rios, with a single-line subject, "Dead Man's Switch." She would know what it meant. She would open it, copy it, and hide it until I told her to move. I sealed the truth behind 3 layers of encryption, 2 different networks, and one very pissed-off lawyer. Then I erased the hotspot's logs, retrieved my hardware, and walked out of the archive. I did not look back. I was a target. Calder had made that clear. I left the archive, dumped the rental car in a long-term parking garage at the airport, and blended into the humid Houston night. I was an auditor trained to find anomalies in spreadsheets. Now I was the anomaly. I was compromised, and I was out of my jurisdiction. I needed someone who owned this jurisdiction. I went to a burner phone I had in my go bag and sent a single, coded text to Captain Elena Rios. The reply came 12 minutes later. "Detective Marco Silas, HPD, homicide. He is solid. He owes me for a family matter. He will meet you. Do not tell him everything. Just tell him what you need." We met at a gas station cafe off the interstate at 4 in the morning. The place smelled of burnt coffee and diesel fumes. Silas was a big man, built like a retired linebacker, with a face that looked like it had been rained on for 20 years. He did not look at me with suspicion. He just looked tired. "You are Rios's girl," he said. It was not a question. "She saved my nephew from a court-martial. What do you need?" "Information," I said, sliding into the booth. "I am not here officially. This is a cold case review, 1997, a transport of children from Ridgeview Home, New Mexico, to a facility here." "Here where?" "A place called Metropolitan Social Relief." Silas sipped his terrible coffee and grimaced. "Never heard of it." "I am hoping you have," I said. "I need the intake manifest. The transport originated with 6 children, I need to know if 6 children arrived. He looked at me, his homicide detective's eyes assessing the gap between what I was saying and what I meant. 6 kids, he repeated. This sounds like a missing persons issue, not a whatever you are. It is a homicide issue, I said. It just took 30 years for the body to get cold. Can you look? Rios saved my nephew, he grunted, sliding out of the booth. I will look. Get a new phone. I will call this number in 24 hours. He was true to his word. The next day, he called. Metropolitan Social Relief was a shell corporation. It was chartered in 96, dissolved in 99. It was a paper entity, but the transport, he said, his voice changing. The transport you mentioned, I found the HPD liaison file. And? And you are right. The transfer manifest from New Mexico lists 6 children, 5 names, and one Case 217L. Lily, I whispered. Yeah, Silas said. They gave her a name for the transfer, Lily Hart. The HPD intake manifest from the Houston Processing Center, dated the next day. It only lists 5 children. Lily Hart is not on it. She vanished, disappeared between New Mexico and the Houston city limits. My breath caught. She was the target. It gets better, Silas said, the sound of paper rustling. I am a homicide cop. I look for the anomaly. This whole transport was an anomaly. It should have been handled by social services. It was handled by ALB. And I found this, tucked into the file, not logged, not numbered. What? An internal memo. From the Department of Defense. It is a request for interagency cooperation. It requests that HPD stand down, that we provide no escort, and that we do not interrupt the transfer, citing a sensitive domestic relocation. Who signed it? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Deputy Coordinator M. Hargrove. Silas read. Signed by hand. Hargrove. As a major, he had forced Brenner to sign in Arizona. As a deputy coordinator, he had signed off on the receiving end in Texas. He had built the cage, and he had signed the door shut. A new, cold dread washed over me. Calder, the archives. They knew I was looking, and Brenner had just confirmed the name of the man who ran the entire operation. Silas, I said, my voice urgent. The man who signed the first paper, Brenner, he is in Arizona. They know I talked to him. They know he talked to me. You think they are cleaning up, he said, his voice flat. I think they are correcting the error. Sun City, Arizona, Silas said, after I gave him the address. That is a long way from Houston. Rios trusted you. I am asking for your help. There was a long pause. Rios saved my nephew, he said again, as if it were a prayer. I will make a call. Get a wellness check. No, I said. A wellness check is a warning. We have to go. We have to be the ones who find him. His testimony is the only thing linking Hargrove to the order. Rios must have pulled a string that shook the foundations of the JAG Corps. Silas was on a plane with me to Phoenix 3 hours later, officially detailed to my non-existent audit task force. We drove to Sun City in silence. The beige stucco community looked even more sterile than before. It looked like a graveyard. I knew it was too late before we even got to the house. The front door was slightly ajar. It was the detail that screamed. Brenner, the meticulous colonel, would never leave his door unlocked, let alone open. Silas put his hand on his weapon and pushed the door open. Colonel Brenner? He called. The house was silent. The lemon oil smell was still there, but underneath it was something else. The sharp, sour tang of spilled liquor. Den, I whispered, remembering the layout. Silas moved, fast and low. I was right behind him. He was in his armchair. Colonel Everett Brenner, retired, was sitting upright, his head tilted back as if sleeping. He was facing his wall of medals. The scene was perfectly, horribly staged. An overturned bottle of Balvenie scotch on the carpet, a pool of dark liquid soaking into the beige. An empty amber-colored prescription bottle on the side table. Oxycodone. The cap was off. No forced entry, Silas murmured. his eyes scanning the room, the windows, the locks. No sign of a struggle. Body is cold. Rigor is setting in. "He did not do this," I said. "Looks like he did, ma'am," Silas said, already shifting into cop mode. "Old soldier, full of regrets, chronic pain, drinks a bottle of scotch, swallows a bottle of pills. It is a clean exit. Too clean." I looked at the scene. It was a statement. It was what Calder meant by correcting the error. This was a message. "They helped him," I said. Silas looked at me. "That is what I mean. This is a staged suicide. It is too perfect. The bottle is empty. The pill bottle is empty. No glass. He just chugged it all? No. Someone set the table." Then I saw it. In the breast pocket of his crisp polo shirt, a folded piece of paper. "Silas," I pointed. He put on a pair of gloves from his pocket, opened an evidence bag, and gently, with 2 fingers, slid the paper from Brenner's pocket. It was a small page, torn from a notepad. The handwriting was a frantic, shaky scrawl, nothing like the precise signature of a colonel. It contained only 5 words. "I tried to warn you." Silas read it, then looked at me. "Warn who? The police?" He left a suicide note that says, "I tried to warn you?" "He did not leave it for the police," I whispered, the cold filling my chest, turning to ice. "He left it for me. He knew they were coming. He knew I would be the one to find him." This was the dying declaration of a man who had been forced to be silent. "We are compromised," Silas said, bagging the note. "We call this in. The locals will rule it a suicide, and Hargrove will have the report on his desk by morning. Knowing we were here, we left. The local police would find him eventually." That night, back in a cheap motel near the Houston airport, the pressure finally materialized. I was sitting in the dark, watching the parking lot. At 0237, a black sedan with government plates pulled into the spot directly opposite my room. It just sat there, engine off. 10 minutes passed. Then, the headlights flashed. Once, twice. It was not a threat. It was a greeting. "We see you." I was out the bathroom window in 30 seconds, grabbing my go bag. I walked to a 24-hour truck stop, dropped my burner phone into a trash can, and walked away. Ava Merrick, Inspector, was dead. I went to a bus station locker. The key had been provided by Rios weeks ago, for an emergency. Inside was a bag, a driver's license for an Alice Gray, a new, clean burner, a credit card, a passport. I was a ghost now. From a secure, encrypted terminal at a university library, I bundled everything I had: the archive files, the audio of Calder's voice, the Lily Hart manifest, the crime scene photos of Brenner's body, the 5-word suicide note. I sent it all in one compressed file to General Thomas Keating. My message was simple. "Brenner is dead. They are cleaning house. I am Alice Gray now. They have silenced every witness but me." The reply came back almost instantly. It was not a sentence. It was not even a word. It was a single, heavy, vibrating keystroke. K. It was the only confirmation I needed. I thought of his hand, the one I had seen break with grief in his office. I knew it was not shaking anymore. It was steady. It was a fist. The noose was tight. Brenner was gone. Lily was a ghost. But they had made a mistake. They had silenced the old soldier. But they had left the inspector, and the inspector had just given all the evidence to the general. Washington, D.C. was a different kind of cold. It was not the high desert chill of New Mexico or the damp humidity of Houston. It was a cold, polished power, a chill that emanated from the white marble and dark suits. General Keating and I entered the North Star Command Complex, a fortress of glass and steel in Arlington, under the thinnest of pretexts. Inspector Merrick, concluding her expanded audit of cross-command logistics. I was a ghost in my own uniform. I was Alice Gray in my head. But I was Ava Merrick on the visitor's badge, and that name was now both a key and a target. Keating was silent, his face carved from granite. He was not here as a general. He was a father carrying a bomb. Malcolm Hargrove's office was on the top floor, the E-ring, with a view that spanned the entire mall, from the Capitol to the Lincoln Memorial. It was a room designed to intimidate, to showcase a life of absolute victory. The desk was a slab of polished black mahogany. The flags were perfectly pressed, and the walls were his armor, an entire surface covered in framed citations, letters of commendation, signed photographs with senators, silver medals in velvet boxes, a testament to a life lived above reproach, a life of absolute, unquestioned honor. He came from behind the desk to greet us, all smiles and practiced warmth. He was in a crisp, dark blue suit, not a uniform. He was a politician now. "Tom," he boomed, shaking Keating's hand, "it is good to see you. Though your inspector here has been causing my people no end of paperwork." He smiled at me, a wolfish, dismissive smile. "Inspector Merrick, you must be very thorough." "I follow the data, Mr. Undersecretary," I said, my voice flat. Good," he said, gesturing us to low, leather chairs that sank when we sat, placing us physically lower than him at his desk. "Now, Tom, what is this logistics problem so urgent it requires 2/3 of my morning?" Keating did not speak. He looked at me. It was my move. I placed my secure tablet on the coffee table. I did not open with accusations. I opened with procedure. "Sir, my audit of the Aegis Logistics Bureau archives revealed an anomaly, a cross-agency transfer from 1997. I swiped the screen. The high-resolution image of the intake photo appeared. Case 217L, the little girl with the sailor bear. "This asset, 217L, was moved from New Mexico to Texas," I said. Hargrove's smile was fixed. He glanced at the photo as if it were a spreadsheet. "A long time ago. Inspector, I fail to see the urgency." "The urgency, sir, is in the authorization," I said. I swiped again. The pristine transfer memo from Box 47C. The authorization code was HVTX-OPS, and the entire operation was sealed under the charter of the Orion Infrastructure Program. I watched him. This was the moment. Nothing. He did not flinch. He did not blink. He was a stone wall. "Orion?" he said, with a perfect note of confusion. "That program was defunct by 1993, a failed initiative. You must have your facts wrong, Inspector." "My facts are quite clear, sir," I said, my voice dropping. And Colonel Everett Brenner confirmed them. He confirmed that Major H., Malcolm Hargrove, personally ordered him to sign the transfer documents, using the defunct Orion seal as a signal for a ghost operation. The mask did not crack, but something happened. A small, violent twitch in the muscle of his right temple, a single, furious pulse. He had not heard that name, not in a long time. His smile vanished. His voice became a blade. "Inspector Merrick," he said, leaning forward, his eyes suddenly dead. "You are not an investigator. You are an auditor. You have just made a career-ending accusation. You are so far out of your authority that you cannot even see the line." He turned his gaze on Keating. "Tom, leash your dog. Whatever fantasy this is, end it, now." Keating did not look at Hargrove. He looked at the tablet, at the picture of the little girl with the bear. "Her name is Emily," he said, his voice quiet, but it filled the room. It silenced the hum of the air conditioning. "What?" Hargrove snapped. Keating raised his head. The grief in his eyes was gone, replaced by a cold, pure fire. "Her name is Emily Keating. She is my daughter. And your name, Malcolm, is on the paperwork that stole her. That is a monstrous, insane allegation." Hargrove spat, rising from his chair. "Is it?" Keating rose with him, not in anger, but in mass. "Then let us find out. If my daughter's name is in your files, in the Orion files, in the HVTX Ops files, I will personally drag you in front of the Senate Armed Services Committee. I will do it in full uniform. I will spend every medal I have ever earned to see you stripped of yours, publicly." This was the threat, the one Hargrove understood. Not morality, not justice, politics, Public humiliation. Hargrove's face went white, then a dark, mottled red. He was cornered, and he did what every cornered animal does. He attacked. "You," he hissed at Keating, "you are finished. I will have you reviewed for mental fitness. I will see you forced into retirement by the end of the week. You are a grieving, delusional old man." He then turned on me. "And you, Inspector, you are a co-conspirator. I will see you court-martialed. I will have you stripped of your rank, your clearance, and your pension. You will be dishonorably discharged for fabricating evidence against a superior officer. You will not just be fired, you will be erased." He was breathing hard. The wall of metals behind him seemed to shimmer. He was a man of total power, reminding a bug of its place in the world. I did not flinch. I just looked at him. I had been in the dark archive. I had smelled Calder's cologne. I had seen Brenner's staged suicide. Losing my job was not even on the list. "You are not afraid of me, Mr. Hargrove," I said, my voice calm. "You are not afraid of General Keating. You are afraid of that photograph." I pointed to the tablet. "You are terrified of a 4-year-old girl, because she is the one thing that can pull down this entire wall of yours." I stood up, and I said the last part, the part that had been true since Ridgeview. "You think you can threaten me with losing my job? But you do not get it." I looked him right in the eye. "You are afraid of the light. I am not even afraid of the dark, and you are a lot more afraid of losing your job than I am." For 1 second, one perfect, crystalline second, I saw it. The mask did not just crack, it shattered. It was not anger in his eyes. It was not power. It was pure, undiluted, animal panic. He saw a person he could not threaten, a person he could not buy, and a person who had the one receipt that could burn his entire world down. He was, for that single breath, terrified. He had built his life on a secret, and the secret was in the room. Then the mask was back. "Get out," he whispered, his voice shaking with rage. "Get out of my office." We left. We walked down the long, carpeted hallway in silence. We did not speak in the elevator. We did not speak until we were out of the building. The cold dias, air hitting our faces. "Well," Keating said, staring at the Washington Monument. "Yes, sir," I said, my heart still racing. "We hit the wire." "He will not wait now," Keating said. "He will activate everything. Calder, everyone." "I know," I said. "We hit him with the files. We hit him with Brenner, but we are missing the one thing we need to make it stick." "What?" "A living witness," I said. "We are missing the girl." That night, I was in a sterile hotel room in Crystal City, operating as Alice Gray. My military credentials were a liability now. I was waiting. I knew they would come. I did not know how. At 3:17 in the morning, the clean burner phone buzzed. It was a text, an untraceable, encrypted P2P message. The number was a random scramble of digits. The message was short. "You ask the right questions. Want to find the girl? Go to Maple Key, Florida. Ask for Lily Carter. Tell no one." I stared at the screen. Lily Carter. A new name. A new ghost. My training screamed at me. Trap. This was Calder. This was Hargrove's countermove. They had failed to intimidate me. So now they were luring me. They were sending me to a kill box in Florida, a place where an auditor from Western Command had no business being. But then, another thought. What if it was not a trap? What if it was a leak? What if someone inside Hargrove's own machine wanted to see him fall? A trap, or a lifeline? There was no way to know. I looked at my other phone, the one to contact Keating. I could call him. We could send a team. We could militarize this. But I looked at the message again. Tell no one. If it was a trap, I could not lead Keating into it. He was too valuable. He was the public face of this fight. And if it was real, if Lily Carter was real, and had been living a quiet life for 30 years, the last thing she needed was a squad of soldiers crashing her front door. She needed one person. She needed the girl from Ridgeview. I made the choice. I erased the message. I powered down the phone to Keating. I was Alice Gray. I was an auditor, a ghost, a witness, and now I was a target going willingly to the X. I checked out of the hotel before dawn. I took a cab to a rental agency and paid cash for a nondescript sedan. The sun was rising, painting the Potomac in shades of gray and pink. As I crossed the bridge and headed south, the compass needle was no longer pointing at procedure. It was pointing at a person. I drove south for 14 hours, living on bad coffee and adrenaline, the Alice Gray driver's license becoming my reality. The transition from the high-stakes, marble and steel environment of DMC to the humid, sun-drenched coast of Florida was jarring. The further south I went, the slower the world seemed to get. Maple Key was not so much a town as a collection of houses huddled on a strip of land by the bay. The main street had a bait shop, a diner, and a lot of peeling paint. The air was thick with salt and the smell of low tide. It was a place where people came to disappear or to be forgotten. It felt, immediately, like a trap. Every slow-moving car, every person watching me from a porch, felt like one of Calder's operatives. But the trap was also the destination. I found the address from the anonymous text on a quiet side street. It was a small, whitewashed house, probably 50 years old, with a screened-in porch and a yard full of blooming hibiscus. The sea-green paint on the trim was flaking. It was painfully normal. In front, a simple black mailbox on a wooden post. The name, stenciled in neat white letters, read, Carter. I sat in my car for a full 5 minutes, my heart a heavy, dull drum. If this was a trap, this was where it sprung. If it was the truth, this was where I changed a woman's life forever. I was not sure which was worse. I got out. I was not Inspector Merrick. I was not Alice Gray. I was the girl from Ridgeview, about to knock on a door I had no right to open. I walked up the path and rang the bell. A moment later, the door opened, and a woman in her late 50s, with kind, crinkling eyes and graying brown hair, stepped onto the porch. She was wiping her hands on an apron. "Can I help you, dear?" she asked, her voice warm, with a soft southern lilt. This was not an operator. This was not a trap. This was a mother. "Mrs. Carter?" "That is me." "My name is Alice," I said. I am an old acquaintance of your daughter's, Lily. I was hoping I could speak with her." Her face lit up at the name. "Oh, Lily. She is at work, honey. She will not be home until after 5. Are you a friend from college?" "From before that," I said. "A long time ago." "Well, goodness, do not stand out in the heat," she said, pushing the screen door open. "Come inside. I was just making sweet tea." "You look like you could use a glass." I stepped inside. The house was cool and clean, smelling of lemon polish and something baking. It was a home, a real home, and on the wall, in the main living room, was the thing I was looking for. A gallery of framed photographs. There was a wedding photo, Mrs. Carter and a man with a kind face. There were photos of a young man in a high school football uniform, and there, in a dozen different frames, was the girl. Her high school graduation, her college graduation, holding a diploma, her laughing on a boat, her hair flying, her in blue medical scrubs, standing with a team. It was her. It was Lily. It was Emily. It was case 217L. The same unruly brown hair, the same bright, piercing blue eyes, the same dimple on the right cheek. She was beautiful. She was whole. I looked at the girl in the photos, the woman who had built a life, and I saw the terrified, 4-year-old face from the archive photo. The rage I felt for Hargrove was so cold, so total. It almost made me dizzy. Is that her?" I asked, my voice thick, pointing to the photo in the scrubs. "Oh, yes, that is my Lily," Mrs. Carter said, handing me a sweating glass of tea. She looked at the photos with a light in her eyes. "She is a physical therapist over at Gulfway Community, works with the veterans. She has a gift, the doctors say, a way of mending things. The same words Sister Rochelle had used, a gift for mending things. We adopted her when she was 6, Mrs. Carter said, her voice dropping into a softer, more confidential tone as she sat on the sofa. We were not supposed to. We were just foster parents. She came from a facility in Houston. Oh, the poor thing. She was a ghost. A ghost? I sat in the chair opposite her, my hands wrapped around the cold glass. She did not speak for the first 6 months, not a word, and the nightmares. Lord, the nightmares. She still gets them. Sometimes. Mrs. Carter leaned forward. She would wake up screaming about just the strangest things. Fences. She was terrified of chain-link fences. And the sound of engines. Big, loud engines. And flags. She would just stare at the flag in the schoolyard. Not with pride, but like she was afraid of it. The missing person report. A joint DoD, state emergency preparedness drill. Fences, engines, flags. Her memory, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Before she came to you? Mrs. Carter shook her head sadly. Nothing. A complete blank slate. The doctor said it was trauma. Something so terrible. Her little mind just built a wall. Everything before she was 6 years old. It is just gone. A big, dark room. Gulfway Community Hospital was 10 minutes away. A low brick building that looked more like a clinic. The rehabilitation wing was in the back, overlooking a small garden. I did not go in as Alice. I went in as a visitor. I found the physical therapy room. It was a large, open space with parallel bars, weight machines, and mats. I saw her immediately. She was not the only therapist, but she was the one everyone was watching. She was working with an older man, a veteran in his 70s, who was missing his left leg. He was struggling with his new prosthesis, his face tight with frustration and pain. Lily. She was steady. She was a fixed point. Her voice was warm and low. I know it hurts, Bill, she was saying, her hands on his shoulders, supporting him. The pain is real, but so are you. You are stronger than this piece of plastic. Now, try again. One more step. For me. Her posture was perfect. Her brown hair was in a practical ponytail. She was strong. She was kind. This was the life she had built. A life of service. A life of healing. A life she had mended for herself. And I was here to tear it all down. I waited for 45 minutes, until her break. She came out of the gym, toweling her face, and headed for a vending machine. I stepped in front of her. Lily Carter? She looked up, startled, bright blue eyes. My memory slammed into me. Lily, who hoarded sugar packets. Lily, who sang to a bear. Yes, she said, her voice open, friendly. Can I help you? My hands were shaking. I forced them still. My name is Ava, I said. I knew you, a very long time ago, at a place called Ridgeview Home. Her friendly smile did not drop. It froze. The light in her eyes went out. Ridgeview? She repeated, the name sounding foreign, like a word she had never heard. I am sorry. I think you have the wrong person. She started to turn away. Please, I said, my voice breaking. Please. I reached into my jacket, my fingers brushing against the archive photo I had stolen, the one of Lily, Emily, holding the one-eyed sailor bear. I held it out. She did not take it. She just stared at it. At the terrified little girl in the black and white image. Her hand, the one reaching for the vending machine, began to tremble. It was a small tremor, then a violent shake. Her eyes, which had been so clear, suddenly blurred with tears she did not understand. She whispered, her gaze fixed on the photo. I dream about that bear. Who is that? That, I said, my own voice thick. Is you? No, she said. A reflex. You had a dream. I pushed, the words coming out fast. A torrent. A dream of a man in a uniform, calling you a name, not Lily, a different name. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with a new, dawning horror. "How do you know that?" she whispered. "I have that dream. A man. He is packing a suitcase, and he calls me. He calls me Emmy. He says, 'Emmy, be good.'" "Your name is not Lily Carter," I said. The words finally spoken. The bomb finally detonated. "Your name is Emily, Emily Keating. Your father is General Thomas Keating. And he never, ever stopped looking for you." She stumbled back, as if I had physically struck her. "No, no, you are lying. My parents, this is my home." She was denying it, but her hands were up, her whole body shaking, rejecting the words. "Hargrove," she was saying. "No, fences, the flags." "What?" I grabbed her arm. I do not know," she cried, pulling away. "The noise, the big trucks, the smell, oil, the smell of oil and a man telling me to be quiet, that it was a game. The sensory memories, they were all there, behind the wall." She was hyperventilating. The woman I had seen as a pillar of strength, completely undone. I grabbed her, my grip firm, the way one soldier steadies another. "Lily, Emily, breathe, just breathe. Look at me." She focused on me, her blue eyes, her father's eyes, swimming in terror. "I will not let them hurt you," I said. "I am here to stop them, but I need you to breathe." I led her out of the hospital, out of the back door. We did not speak. I walked her 2 blocks to the bay. There was a small wooden pier, the same one I had seen driving in, its paint peeling. We sat on the edge, our feet dangling over the still, green water. We sat in silence for a long time, 10 minutes, 20. The water was flat, like a mirror. Finally, she spoke, her voice a reedy whisper. "Who?" she asked. "Is Emily Keating?" "She is a girl who was lost," I said, staring at the water. "A girl whose father moved heaven and earth to find her. A girl who was stolen by a powerful man and hidden. A girl who was given a new name and a new life, and who grew up to be a strong, kind woman who mends people." She looked at me, her eyes clear now, the tears gone. "And who are you?" "I am the girl who was in the cot next to hers," I said. "I am the one who remembered the bear." She processed this. She was a therapist. She knew how trauma worked. Now she was her own patient. "This man," she said, "this general, my father, he is a good man," I said. "He is drowning in grief. He thinks he will never see you again." "And the man who stole me?" "He is trying to bury the secret," I said. "He is trying to bury me. He is the reason I am here." I looked at her, the moment of truth. "Lily, Emily, this is your choice, no one else's. We can get up, walk away, and you can go back to your life. I will disappear. Hargrove will never find you. You can be Lily Carter for the rest of your life, or we can face them, together." She was quiet. She watched a pelican dive, hitting the water with a sharp splash. Then, she looked down at her hands, the hands that mended veterans. "The man I dream about," she said, her voice small. "The one who calls me Emmy, he has sad eyes." She turned to me, her decision made. "I want to meet him." The words hung in the salty air. The key, the lock, the past was open. I made the call on the Alice Gray burner. My voice was steady, purely logistical. "General, I have found her. She is alive. She is safe, Maple Key, Florida." The line was silent for 5 full seconds. I heard a sound, a sharp intake of breath, a choked-off syllable. Then, the general's voice, thick, unrecognizable. "ETA, 4 hours." He did not fly commercial. He arrived in a nondescript private charter at a small regional airstrip 20 miles away, a man who looked like he had aged a decade since our meeting in DRC. He wore a rumpled civilian suit, his face pale, his hands trembling. The soldier was gone. This was just a man. I met him on the tarmac. He grabbed my shoulders, his eyes frantic, searching mine for the lie. Is it truly? It is her, sir, I said, my voice softer than I intended. She is waiting. I drove him to the bay, to the pier. Lily, Emily, was standing exactly where I had left her, at the end of the wooden planks, staring out at the water. She was wearing a simple dress, her brown hair pulled back. She looked small against the vastness of the bay. Keating got out of the car. He straightened his suit jacket, an instinctive act of military discipline. He took one step onto the pier. The old wood groaned under his hard-soled shoes. He walked, not fast, not slow, a measured pace. Emily heard the steps. She turned. They faced each other, 20 feet apart, a father and a daughter, separated by 30 years and a chasm of classified lies. He stopped, about 10 feet from her. He did not seem to know what to do with his hands. He just looked. He drank her in, his face a mask of agonizing, breaking control. Emmy, he whispered, the name, the one from her dreams. She did not answer. She just made a sound. A small, broken, half-sob, a sound of recognition so deep it bypassed memory and went straight to the bone. He took one more step, his hand reaching out, not to touch her, just reaching. My God, he breathed, his voice breaking. It is you. That was all it took, the dam of her own confusion. Her entire life of Lily Carter broke. She did not run to him. She collapsed toward him. He met her halfway, catching her in an embrace that was so tight it looked painful. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her head against his chest, his entire body shaking. The sound that came from General Thomas Keating was a ragged, tearing gasp. He buried his face in her hair, his eyes squeezed shut, and just held her. He held her like she was 4 years old, and he had just pulled her back from a speeding car. The silence of the bay was broken by the sound of a father's heart, which had been stopped for 30 years, finally starting again. I did not watch. It was not my moment. I turned away, my back to them, and I did what I was there to do. I scanned the perimeter. My eyes swept the quiet, lazy bay road, the bait shop, the diner, the parked cars, and I saw it, about a quarter-mile down, parked in the deep shade of a banyan tree. Facing us, a dark sedan, black, spotless, with tinted windows. It had no front plate, and it did not belong in Maple Key. It was not a trap, it was surveillance, Calder, or his people. They had not just led me here, they had followed me. The reunion was happening, but the enemy was watching. We moved them to a safe house, a rental cottage on the beach that Captain Rios had secured through a JAG cutout, paid for in cash 2 weeks prior. The drapes were drawn. The air conditioning hummed. He is here, I said. As I locked the door, I told Keating about the sedan. Let him watch, Keating said. He was sitting on the sofa, his arm protectively around Emily, who sat beside him, pale, clutching his hand as if it were a lifeline. He is not watching, sir. He is waiting, I countered. We are in the fire before the storm phase. We have the emotional truth. Now we need the legal proof, and we need it before he moves. We laid out the plan on the cheap coffee table. Step 1, I began, my voice all inspector. We keep you. I looked at Emily. Out of the media, completely. Hargrove's first move will be to paint you as an unstable, grasping opportunist. He will discredit you before you can even speak. She nodded, her eyes wide, still in shock, but listening. Step 2. Hard evidence. We need to legally and scientifically prove you are Emily Keating. I looked at her, my voice softening. I am sorry. This is going to be clinical. I need to document your identifying marks. The half-moon mole on your neck. She turned her head, her hand still in her father's. I took the high-resolution, time-stamped photograph. Any other unique scars? From childhood? From Ridgeview? She thought for a second. My leg, she whispered. I fell from the fence, the chain-link fence. I was trying to see the plains. A small, jagged scar, left shin, just below the knee, I said, the memory hitting me. Yes, she whispered. I photographed it. It corroborates the medical files from the archive. Good. Finally, I said. The DNA, it has to be airtight. No chain of custody errors. How? Keating asked. We are ghosts here. Captain Rios is already handling it, I said. She has contracted a private, state-certified lab. They are on standby. The request is being filed under a sealed warrant for a verification of missing persons, Jane Doe case, your sample, General, and yours, Emily, will be processed. The results will be sealed by a civilian judge before Hargrove even knows we have them. While a local medical tech, a friend of Rios's, discreetly took the swabs. I moved to my own front. I booted my encrypted laptop. It was time to formalize the war. I bundled every piece of data, the archive photos of Case 217L, the audio file of Calder's threat in the Houston archive, the HPD manifest from Detective Silas, showing 5 children arriving, not 6, the photo of Brenner's 5-word suicide note. I addressed it, encrypted, to the one body Hargrove could not control, but had to answer to, the North Star Internal Oversight Committee. My subject line was cold and procedural. Formal complaint, lapsed ethics, legacy program, Orion. My finger hovered over the send button. This was the final line. The moment I officially turned on my own command to save it, I hit send. At the same time, Silas was doing the groundwork. He met me at a gas station, 2 towns over. The adoptive mother, Mrs. Carter, he said, sliding a folder across the table. She is a good woman, and she is terrified. She signed a sworn affidavit. They were told Lily was a state-run orphan. Severe distress, no family. They adopted her in good faith. They are victims, just like everyone else. Get her somewhere safe, I said. Already done. She is with her son in Orlando. She is off the board, Silas said. He looked grim. Which brings us to the bad news. The call came back from Sun City PD. Just like we figured. They closed the case, I said. It was not a question. You guessed it. Case closed, he confirmed. The report is already filed. Official narrative. A lonely old man, his prescription meds, and a bottle. They are not looking any closer. Calder's report, I said, the words tasting like acid. A neatly closed case, perfect in every detail. Silas agreed. But I logged an official query from HPD, noting the anomalous nature of the unverified suicide note. I requested that all files be preserved for a secondary review, pending our own case. You kept the door open, I said, grateful. I wedged a boot in it, he corrected. It will not hold long, but it is something. Hargrove thinks he is clean, but the file is not buried. It is just waiting. I returned to the safe house. The atmosphere was thick with 30 years of unsaid words. Emily was sitting on the floor, looking at the old photographs Keating had brought from his home, the ones I had seen on his desk. But more, Emily on a tricycle, Emily covered in mud. I do not remember him, she whispered to me, when her father was on the porch, his back to us. I do not remember this face. I feel it, like an echo in a bare room. It will come, I said. Or it will not. You are Lily, and you are Emily. You are both. You do not have to choose. She was practicing breathing, the slow, meditative breaths she taught her patients. She was preparing. Keating was on the porch, staring at the ocean. He was practicing his own release. He was letting go of the guilt that had defined his life. He was not a failure. He was a father. The calm, the planning, the strategy. It felt good. It felt controlled. It lasted until 10:14 at night. My clean burner phone buzzed. A secure text from a number I recognized. Captain Elena Rios. The message was not in code. It was pure, unadulterated panic. Ava, he knows. My source inside OSD just tripped the high alarm. Hargrove has activated Purge 9. I went cold. I had seen Purge 9 in the deep-level logistics protocols. It was a failsafe, a protocol for the absolute, catastrophic destruction of a compromised program. It was not just deleting files. It was thermal charges in archives. It was acid-washing data servers. It was the complete, total erasure of history. Rios's next text confirmed it. He is trying to destroy the Orion hard copies, all of them, the ones in Houston, the ones in DMC. He is wiping the slate, right now. The clock had not just started. It was seconds from midnight. He is burning the evidence, I said, walking onto the porch, my voice flat, all emotion gone. Keating turned. The father was gone. The general was back. When? Now, I said. Hargrove is activating Purge 9. He is destroying the Orion program from the ground up. The storm was no longer before. It was here. We had the witness. We had the DNA. But in an hour, we would not have a single piece of corroborating paper. Hargrove was going for broke. He thinks he can erase it all, Keating said, his voice a low growl. He can, I said. He is erasing the paper trail. He is erasing Brenner. He is erasing Lily Hart. He thinks he can erase Emily Keating. He can, Keating agreed, but he cannot erase me. Hargrove was burning the world. He was activating thermal charges, acid-washing servers. He was a man with a blowtorch, trying to erase a tattoo from his own skin. He thought if the paper trail was gone, the crime never happened. He was wrong. He can burn the paper, I said, my voice cold with the certainty of my own profession. But he cannot burn the time. What? Keating asked, the general's mind moving, trying to see the tactical map. An auditor's failsafe, I said. The moment I had the files from Box 47C, I knew they were vulnerable. I had Rios do a formal certification. She filed the entire digital package, every scan, every photo, with the court seal ledger. Keating's eyes widened. The ledger was an obscure, high-security digital vault, a system used to timestamp and certify evidence for military tribunals. Once a file was logged, it was sealed with a precise time, to the microsecond. It was legally unimpeachable. She sealed it, I explained. 24 hours before Brenner was found dead. The digital copy is time-stamped. It is certified. It is legally pristine. Hargrove can destroy the originals. But all he is doing is proving he has something to hide. He is burning the evidence of a crime that we have already logged into the court record. The trap had to be set. We could not just leak the files. That was messy. That was a political brawl. We needed a confession. We needed a clean kill. Inspector Ava Merrick, sent one last official email to Undersecretary Malcolm Hargrove. Subject: Confirmation of Orion residuals. The email was polite, bureaucratic. I stated that my expanded audit had found residual assets from the defunct Orion program that required immediate sign-off. I requested a final exit confirmation meeting to close the audit. I set the meeting for the next morning, 10:00 hours, at the North Star Command Complex. I copied General Keating and, crucially, the Chief Legal Counsel for Internal Affairs. It was a baited hook, dipped in procedure. I was inviting him to his own execution, using the language of an audit. He replied in 2 minutes. Confirmed. He thought he was coming to shut me down. He thought he was coming to collect the last, stray piece of evidence, me. The conference room was cold, polished, and sterile. Keating sat at the head of the table, his uniform impeccable, his face a sheet of iron. The legal counsel, a sharp-eyed woman I did not know, sat to his right. I sat to his left, my laptop open, connected to the main screen. The door opened at 1000 hours precisely. Malcolm Hargrove entered. He was not smiling this time. His face was a mask of controlled, righteous fury. He was here to end this, and right behind him, his shadow, was Mr. Calder. His suit perfect, his eyes empty, carrying a locked briefcase. "This is an absurd waste of my time," Hargrove began, taking a seat opposite Keating. "Inspector Merrick's audit has become a rogue obsession. I am here, on the record with counsel, to have her formally censured and suspended." Calder stood behind him, a silent enforcer. He believed he was here for the cleanup. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Undersecretary," I said, my voice flat. "I am just here to confirm my findings." "You are correct. The Orion program was defunct, but I found its ghost." I clicked a button. The main screen lit up. It was not a spreadsheet. It was the court seal ledger certificate, time-stamped, verified. "This is the complete digital file from ALB Houston, Box 47C, as logged with the military court 2 days ago," I said. Hargrove's face tightened. The first flicker of panic. He had burned the originals. He did not know about the copy. "I am also logging into evidence the official HPD transfer manifest, showing 6 children departing New Mexico and 5 arriving in Houston." Click, the document appeared. "And the internal DUD memo, requesting HPD stand down, signed by Deputy Coordinator M. Hargrove." Click, his own signature, 28 years old, filled the screen. "And, as a courtesy, the sworn testimony of Colonel Everett Brenner, given to me 48 hours before his untimely death." I did not have Brenner's testimony. I had his 5-word suicide note. But Hargrove did not know that. I was bluffing, and his eyes told me I had hit. "This is slander." Hargrove slammed the table. This is fabricated. This is a coup. It is a chain of custody," I said. "And it is all backed up. Everything you see is on a public escrow server. If my vital signs stop, or if I fail to check in, this entire package goes to every media outlet on the East Coast." Hargrove looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. He was trapped. He was exposed. And then, the first surprise. "She is telling the truth, sir." The voice was Calder's, smooth, calm, detached. Hargrove turned, his expression of pure shock. "What did you say? Calder?" "She is telling the truth," Calder repeated. He stepped forward, away from Hargrove, and placed his locked briefcase on the table. He opened it. "The inspector has digital copies. Impressive, but I have always been a man who prefers hard copies." He pulled out a single, thin file. "The Undersecretary," Calder said, addressing the room, "ordered the activation of Purge 9, a protocol I advised against, as it implies guilt." He placed a single sheet of paper on the table. It was the Purge 9 activation order, signed, in fresh ink, by Malcolm Hargrove. "He is a reckless man," Calder said, his voice almost sad. "He was so desperate to clean the slate that he made one last, fatal error." He placed a small, digital audio recorder on the table. "Yesterday, he instructed me to manage the situation. He told me that if this ever came to light, the official story would be that I, and a few other overeager subordinates, had misinterpreted his orders 30 years ago. He was, in effect, ordering me to be the scapegoat. He was building his exit. I, however, prefer my own." Calder nodded to me. "I was the one who sent the anonymous text. Inspector, Maple Key. I was diversifying my assets." He had been Hargrove's fixer for 20 years. He knew where all the bodies were buried, and he knew a sinking ship when he was on it. He had just traded his loyalty for immunity. Hargrove was sputtering, his face purple. You traitor? You are finished." "No, sir," Calder said, adjusting his tie. "You are—" And at that moment, the door to the conference room opened again. This time, it was not one person. It was the head of the Internal Oversight Committee, flanked by 2 military police officers. Malcolm Hargrove, the committee head said, his voice booming. We have received a formal complaint from Inspector Merrick, which is now corroborated by Mr. Calder. This was the second surprise. My team, the committee head continued, acted on that complaint. While your Purge 9 order was busy destroying the main archives, a blatant act of evidence destruction, you overlooked the analog backups. We raided the supplemental Orion server room, and we found this. He held up a thick-bound ledger. A physical handwritten operations manual from 1992. We found Major H's planning notebook, page after page, in your own handwriting, he said. With notes, utilize relief cover, classify asset as non-traditional, bypass civilian chain. You did not just follow an order, Major Hargrove. You wrote the plan. Hargrove finally, completely, broke. He lunged, a desperate, pathetic roar, grabbing for the ledger. It is a lie. You all. It is a conspiracy. The military police officers restrained him easily. He was just a man in a suit, his power gone, his armor of commendations just so much useless tin. Keating, who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke. He stood up, and his voice was not the voice of a grieving father. It was the voice of the Corps itself. Undersecretary Hargrove, he said, his voice low. The North Star Code of Honor. Section 1. An officer will not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. Section 2. An officer's honor is his bond, and is the foundation of the trust placed in him by his country. Keating's voice was the only sound, each word a hammer blow, a nail in the coffin. You did not just lose your way, Malcolm. You betrayed the very honor you swore to uphold. You used the shield to hide your crimes. You are a disgrace. The door opened one last time. Captain Elena Rios stepped in, holding a single, sealed document. Mr. Counsel, she said, addressing the lawyer, I have the final piece. The court ordered. Time-stamped, legally certified DNA results. She laid it on the table. The sample from General Thomas Keating and the sample from Ms. Lily Carter of Maple Key, Florida, are a 99.99% parent-child match. She looked at Hargrove, her eyes like ice. The legal identity of Emily Keating has been restored. We have also, by order of the court, sealed the records of her adoptive family, the Carters, who acted in good faith, are legally protected from this entire proceeding. They are victims, and they will be treated as such. The case was closed, airtight. Hargrove was led away, his face ashen, his threats silent. He was being transferred to military court, to be tried for abuse of power, kidnapping, and 30 years of lies. I went back to Maple Key. The air was salty and warm again. The world was quiet. I found Emily on the beach. She was not Lily Carter, and she was not entirely Emily Keating. She was just herself. I had one last thing for her. I found this, I said, in a box of old donations at Ridgeview. I kept it. I do not know why. I held out my hand. In my palm was a small, cheap, enameled pin, the pin we were given when we first arrived at the orphanage, a small, blue bird. She looked at it, then she reached out and took it. She held it, her 2 lives, in the palm of her hand. I am going to testify, she said, her voice quiet, but strong. I will stand up. I will tell the truth, but I am not going to let this ruin them. Ruin who? My mom, Mrs. Carter, and me. She looked at me, her father's blue eyes finding mine. I am not going to let him turn me into a person of revenge. He stole my past. I will not let him steal my future. I am a healer. Ava. I am going back to the hospital. I am going to keep mending people. She chose not to destroy. She chose to build. My work was done. The audit was over. But I was not the same inspector. I could not go back to just checking numbers. I filed my transfer request. I was not leaving the service. I was just changing my vector. I applied to the new Veterans Transition Wing, a special unit designed to investigate the invisible gaps, the places where soldiers and their families fell through the cracks of the system. I was still an auditor. I was still a witness. But now, I was investigating the spaces between the lines, the places where people, not numbers, got lost. The last time I saw them, it was on that old wooden pier in Maple Key. General Keating was in civilian clothes. Emily, Lily, was between us. The three of us stood there, a strange, broken, and mended family. The soldier who had lost his honor, the daughter who had lost her name, and the orphan who had lost her home. We stood in the wind, by the water, the past a scar. But the future was finally, a clear horizon. The war was over. The truth was out. We were, all of us, finally standing in the light. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know what you think. So please comment below and let me know where you are tuning in from. Let us connect and share our thoughts. And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.